Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review of I, Borg, which is episode 23 of season 5 of Star Trek The Next Generation. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek as requested by my viewers. This episode was requested by Brock Morlair. So, I, Borg was the episode in which, while visiting an unexplored star system, the Enterprise encountered a crashed Borg scout ship with a single survivor whose life is in danger. Dr. Crusher convinces Captain Picard to beam the Borg aboard the ship so she can bring him back to health. However, once he's on board, Picard concocts a plan to infect him with a computer virus and then return him to the collective, the idea being that he would spread the virus to the rest of the collective that would ultimately result in a complete annihilation of the Borg. However, as they are preparing the Borg and studying him, Geordi LaForge forms a bond with him and names him Hugh. He comes to look at him as a homesick child rather than a mortal enemy and starts to second-guess their plans. He eventually convinces Guinan to visit him, and once she changes her mind about him and convinces Picard to visit the Borg as well. When Hugh sees Picard, he mistakes him for Locutus, and Picard plays along with this and orders Hugh to kill LaForge, but Hugh refuses and realizes his individualism. After having recognized Hugh as a complete individual, Picard can no longer in good conscience go through the plan, so the decision is made to return Hugh to the collective as is, with the hope that his new sense of individuality will spread throughout the Borg. So this was a massive change in pace than how we had previously seen the Borg. At this stage in Star Trek, the Borg had only made 2 appearances prior to this one. One in the second season episode Q Who, and the third season cliffhanger that concluded with the 4th season premiere, The Best of Both Worlds. Both of those episodes were very tense, action-packed, and portrayed the Borg as a horrible adversary, whereas this episode took that image of the Borg and totally flipped it on its head, something I think Star Trek does best. One of the things I feel sets Star Trek apart from a lot of the other science fiction shows of the time is that it doesn't just present two-dimensional villains or situations. There's always a complex story behind everything. So it's so great to explore a totally different side to the most menacing villain ever introduced in the Star Trek universe.
When you sleep, there are no other voices in your mind.
No.
Are you ever lonely?
Sometimes. But that's why we have friends.
Friends?
Sure. Someone you can talk to, who will be with you when you're lonely. Someone who makes you feel better.
Like Geordi and Hugh.
Also, this was in keeping with the tone that Season 5 was setting overall, as Season 5 had episodes that were a lot more dramatic and tended toward character drama and dialogue-driven scenes rather than relying on action or weird science fiction scenarios. So I, Borg, was the Borg with a 5th season slant. However, I did watch this episode when it first aired, and the trailer for this episode was very misleading and tried to present it as an exciting follow-up to The Best of Both Worlds. So many people, including myself, I think, were disappointed when they first saw it because they were expecting something exciting and action-packed, but instead it was a slow-paced character drama. But despite my initial disappointment, which I can barely remember now, I look back on this episode as Star Trek doing what it does best, exploring what it is to be human and to have compassion, and you get to see those you thought of before as a monster or a killing machine and just flip that on its head and instead present them as a lost, scared child. That was such a powerful twist. And it was great seeing the effect this had on Guinan, whose people were all but wiped out by the Borg, and on Picard, who was assimilated by them and forced to participate in killing many of his Starfleet officers. This allowed for some of the best dramatic scenes in all of Star Trek, where Patrick Stewart could really show off his acting chops.
If you're going to use this person...
It's not a person, damn it, it's a Borg!
If you are going to use this person to destroy his race, you should at least look him in the eye once before you do it. Because I am not sure he is still a Borg.
And from a storytelling standpoint, it was great as well, because it was a well-paced character story, as it starts off with the Borg being a typical Borg drone telling everyone they will be assimilated and being stubborn.
We are Borg. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Just look around, pal. You're hardly in a position to make any demands.
We must return to the collective.
And then we slowly get to see him coming to terms with what it means to be an individual.
Resistance is not futile?
No, but thanks to you, there are very few of us left. We're scattered throughout the galaxy. We don't even have a home anymore.
What you are saying is that you are lonely.
What?
You have no others. You have no home. We are also lonely.
And plus, how this character development affected people around him like LaForge, Picard, and Guinan. It was really powerful character storytelling on a lot of accounts, and it was just pulled off so well. This was also a great episode for Dr. Crusher, as throughout she was being the moral conscience, as she was opposed to Picard's plan to wipe out the Borg, which was basically genocide on a massive scale.
But even in war, there are rules. You don't kill civilians indiscriminately.
There are no civilians among the Borg. Think of them as a single collective being. There's no one Borg who is more an individual than your arm or your leg.
How convenient.
Your point, Doctor.
When I look at my patient, I don't see a collective consciousness. I don't see a hive. I see a living, breathing boy who has been hurt and who needs our help. And we're talking about sending him back to his people as an instrument of destruction.
However, in true Star Trek fashion, they realize the quality of life and that things are often more complicated than they appear, so overall, a very powerful story. This is the first episode where we see a Borg say the phrase, "You will be assimilated." In the Best of Both Worlds, Locutus talks about assimilating Earth's cultures and technology, but never uses the phrase, "You will be assimilated." So this set the stage for the Borg's primary function to be to assimilate people, which quite differs from how they were presented in Q, as having absolutely no interest in people, just technology. This is also the first time they establish Borg designations, as we are introduced to Third of Five. This would become an established part of Borg culture in Voyager, where one of the main cast members is 7 of 9. Her story was quite similar to Hugh's, except she had a completely different reaction to being separated from the Borg and was far more hostile about it. So now, let me get into the flaws of the episode, which unfortunately there were a few. Similar to what I said in my Best of Both Worlds review about their plan to put the Borg to sleep being kind of a cheap and easy solution similar to the computer virus in Independence Day, this episode makes an even worse blunder with the idea that a computer virus that would basically destroy all of the Borg. Contrary to what popular science fiction would have us believe, if a computer comes across conflicting information or information it doesn't understand, it doesn't explode. This was a classic sci-fi trope seen in many classic science fictions, including several episodes of the original series, including I, Mud, and The Changeling. All this computer virus was a version of that, and it's pretty ridiculous that a powerful race as invincible as the Borg can be taken down by an image, and it could wipe out the whole race. Again, the Borg and Voyager were established as far more powerful than this and would never fall for something as simple. Similarly, the plan they eventually end up coming with to send Hugh back to the Borg with a sense of individuality that would spread throughout the collective is equally as implausible, because the Borg assimilate individuals all the time and they aren't affected by it. They simply wipe out that person's sense of individuality, so it's ludicrous to suggest they simply wouldn't do the same to Hugh. Also, Hugh comes off as very naive and doesn't understand the basics about being an individual, and that they don't even want to be assimilated. Of course, the Borg would have no sense of what it's like to be an individual, but they would know how they behave because they need to know this to defeat their enemy. And if the Borg knows this, then Hugh knows this because they're a collective. I think 7 of 9's hostile reaction to being separated from the collective was a bit more realistic than this. That being said, this was still a really powerful dramatic episode and a very risky step to take a fan-favorite villain that everyone wanted another giant action piece out of, but give a heartfelt dramatic episode instead, and it really pays off in spades. So my rating for I, Borg is a 9 excellent. An extremely powerful, dramatic character story, however it can seem a bit slow at times and has a few plot holes, but overall these are outweighed by some amazing acting and a story that manages to have full character development and a guest character while at the same time having massive character developments and established characters like Picard, Guinan, and LaForge, making this a truly powerful and unique episode. So that's it for my review of I, Borg. If there's an episode from any of the 5 Star Trek series you'd like me to review, just leave a comment below with an episode you'd like me to review, but please 1 request per person. And make sure you subscribe so you can keep up with all that, and thanks a lot for watching.